Since the Labour government came to power, they've promised to protect working people and deliver good, secure jobs. Their employment rights bill seeks to deliver the biggest upgrade to workers' rights in a generation, and the Chancellor has deliberately focused tax rises on businesses instead of workers. But is it working? For a long time, Britain's labour market has been one of the quiet strengths of our economy. Unemployment has been relatively low, and we've been able to create millions of jobs even in tough times. Employment and job vacancies recovered pretty quickly after the shocks of the financial crash, Brexit and COVID. But now a new trend is emerging. Job vacancies are falling and unemployment is rising. But what's behind this? In this video, we will look at how the government's actions have affected the jobs market, the impact of raising costs on employment, the longer-term trends in the UK, and the best way to deliver more jobs and support working people. The cost of employment. There are three different ways to think about the cost of a job. The first is the number that we normally think about, the headline wage or salary that an employee receives. This is the number advertised on job listings and the one in our contracts. But this number is misleading. It doesn't represent what you actually receive into your bank account as an employee, nor what the employer actually stumps up to employ you. The second number at the bottom of the chain, the one that hits your account, is the headline salary number minus all the things that come out of our pay packets, including income tax, national insurance, pension contributions, and student loan repayments. The third number at the top of the chain is the one that your employer has to pay. It's the headline salary plus tangible costs, like national insurance contributions, that all employers must pay to the government per employee, and pension contributions they must pay to each employee. Then there are the intangible costs of things like training, HR, equipment, and everything it takes to deliver all of the other things that employees are entitled to. When it comes to the cost of employment, whether a business can afford to hire someone, this is the number that actually matters. And the government is doing three big things that are making this number bigger and making it much more expensive to hire people. Minimum wage. Firstly, they're raising the minimum wage and have begun equalising the minimum wage between age groups. In April 2025, the national living wage paid to over 21s went up by 6.7%, and the national minimum wage for 18 to 20-year-olds rose by 16%. This increases payroll costs significantly, especially for sectors that rely on young or entry-level workers. For those on the lowest pay, it will mean an increase in their wages by hiking up their headline salary, and ultimately the money that hits their wallets. But for many businesses, this will mean less budget to spend on more staff and fewer incentives to hire young, less experienced people looking to get their first job on the career ladder. It will likely mean fewer opportunities for inexperienced candidates and reduced flexibility to offer training roles. Employers' national insurance contributions. Second, the government increased employers' national insurance contributions, or NICs, from 13.8% to 15%, and lowered the threshold over which they have to be paid, from wages over £9,000 per year to £5,000 per year. This adds again to that top number, the outlay businesses have to make to employ someone. But unlike the minimum wage rise, this doesn't trickle down to the pay packets of any workers. Instead, it goes to the government. When it doesn't appear on workers' pay slips, the reality is that much of this cost is passed on through lower wage growth or reduced hiring. The OBR predicts 76% of the cost of this higher tax will be borne by employees. Higher NICs make each new hire more expensive, which discourages expansion and limits opportunities. The Employment Rights Bill. The third way in which the government is making hiring more expensive for businesses is by adding to the obligations a business must fulfil for each employee, mainly through the Employment Rights Bill. It includes a host of new rights for workers and unions, including limiting zero-hours contracts by guaranteeing minimum hours, granting day-one rights to unfair dismissal protection, parental leave and flexible working, strengthening union powers and lowering barriers to strike action, expanding employer liability for harassment by third parties. While there may not be specific percentages or numbers attached to each of these rights in the same way as minimum wage or national insurance hikes, none of them can be delivered for free. For example, when someone is on paid leave, a business is still paying a wage, but no value is being created. They must either accept this loss of value or pay someone else in addition to replace the lost value temporarily. Similarly, productive capacity is lost when employees go on strike, and businesses will be forced to reach higher settlements to avoid strikes if they are made much easier to start. Increased employer liabilities for things like harassment by third parties will mean increased insurance and legal costs. Then there's the cost of HR departments and consultancy fees to ensure all of these rules are being followed properly. The government itself estimates the Employment Rights Bill will cost businesses around £5 billion a year. That's money that could have gone into new hires, wage increases, or productive investment. Raise those costs and something has to give. Sometimes it's lower wage growth, often it's fewer jobs. The government's case. So what's the government's case? If these things are so damaging, why do them? The raise in minimum wage is meant to increase the incomes of the lowest earners. The hike in employer national insurance contributions helps raise money to fund public services. And the Employment Rights Bill, they argue, is delivering the greatest upgrades to workers' rights in a generation. All of these are noble aims. The government could argue that these things are just as, if not more important than boosting economic growth and creating more jobs. But they don't. The Prime Minister and his team have said time and again that economic growth is their number one priority. And they particularly claim that the Employment Rights Bill is a pro-growth measure. If that was right, we could reasonably hope that the benefits of the bill on job creation would outweigh the negatives. So what are those benefits? Do stronger rights boost productivity? Well, the government's own analysis admits the bill's effect on growth will be positive but small. And that's the optimistic view. On one view, better working conditions can make happier workers, and happier workers can be more productive. There's evidence that job satisfaction can lift output by around 8%. But the link between these specific rights in the Employment Rights Bill and job satisfaction, let alone productivity, is weak. In fact, that 8% number measures satisfaction with pay only, not conditions and other benefits. So if those rights raise business costs and suppress wages, you might actually get the opposite effect. Another argument suggested by the government is that higher costs force firms to invest in better training or technology. That's sometimes true. Think of the Factory Acts in the 1800s that restricted the use of child labour. Businesses instead were forced to find their productivity gains elsewhere, for the better, and they did. But today, child labour isn't on the agenda, and increased costs can also mean scaling back productive hiring, cutting hours, or even closing down less profitable operations. The government also suggests that if these new rights mean people will stay around for longer in their current jobs, it will incentivise investment into them that will boost productivity. It may be more tempting for a business to send an employee on a training course if there's less risk of that employee then leaving and taking the new skills elsewhere. However, the government then also suggests that there may also be productivity benefits from a more flexible jobs market. If employees get access to things like parental leave from day one, the job switching becomes less risky. This might allow employees to get to more productive roles more easily and boost growth that way. But then why bother investing in staff? What businesses think? If the Employment Rights Bill really was a growth engine, you'd expect business leaders to cheer it on. Instead, 72% of Institute of Directors members think it will harm growth. Nearly half say that they will likely hire fewer staff as a result. And the 5 biggest business groups in the UK wrote a joint letter to the government saying the bill, unamended, will damage growth and employment and undermine the government's own goals. So what's the bigger picture? It's no surprise then that the jobs numbers have taken a turn for the worse. But this isn't just about one bill, or even recent tax rises and minimum wage hikes. Some of the negative turn in the data precedes these changes and this government. It's also the consequence of a long-term shift away from a dynamic, opportunity-creating labour market toward one that is rigid, costly and less able to adapt. For years, the UK has avoided the chronic unemployment seen in many European countries. A relatively flexible jobs market made it easier for businesses to hire, and just as importantly, to adapt when conditions changed. But that flexibility has been eroding for a while now. Bit by bit, new rules, mandates and obligations have piled up. Higher minimum wages, more complex leave rights, occupational licensing, restrictions on contracts and equal pay mandates that ignore market realities. These rules may have noble aims, but they can make it riskier, more difficult and more expensive for businesses to hire people, and so harder for people to get a foot in the door, especially young or less experienced workers. So, is the government killing jobs? Over time, yes. By steadily raising the cost and risk of hiring, the government is undermining one of our economy's greatest strengths. The paradox is that laws meant to protect workers can end up locking people out of work entirely. The best protection any worker can have is a thriving labour market where businesses are competing to hire you. What's the alternative? Well, we can protect people from exploitation without smothering job creation. It is possible. That means stripping back rules that add cost without clear benefit, while keeping core safeguards like health and safety, limits in dangerous sectors, anti-active discrimination, and basic but fair dismissal rights. We should let pay and conditions be set by mutual agreement between consenting parties, not by judges after courtroom battles or unions holding entire sectors to ransom. We should make hiring easier, not harder, so more people can get into work, build skills, and progress into new and more productive roles. This is how you protect the interests of workers. A more flexible, competitive labour market isn't just good for employers. It's the foundation for higher productivity, stronger growth, and better living standards for everyone. In conclusion, jobs matter. If we want more of them, we should make it easier, not harder, and cheaper, not more expensive, to create them.